All right, Bezrat Hashem. So we are starting now Pasuk Dalet, Perek Dalet, Pasuk Dalet. So in Pasuk Gimel, we discussed the impact and the importance of speech and the role it has on a person. Now, Shlomo HaMelech is going to emphasize a little bit more that ma'ala, or that the greatness of the speech from a different part of the body. So the pasuk says the following: Kemigdal David tzavarech, your neck, your tzava, right? Your neck is strong like the Tower of David. Banui letalpiot, it's built to hold wars and weapons, and to it's built in a way that it can resist to an attack. Elef amagen talui alav, you have 1,000 shields that sit on it. Kol shiltei hagiburim, and those are shields of all the giburim, of all the chayalim, of all the soldiers that are here to protect, obviously, the city that is surrounded by those towers. The Malbim, I'm going to start this pasuk with the Malbim because it's introductory to what I believe the Gaon is trying to teach us. The Malbim tells us that we spoke about in the beginning of the Perek about the beauty of the essence, the hairs, right? We spoke about the teeth. We spoke about the lips, right? All this are all part of what we call the head, the mohin, right? Where we have the intellect and where we have the thoughts, etc. This power is obviously connected to the body. How is the head connected to the body? By the neck. So he says the neck represents the channel and the buffer between the head and between the body and between the lungs, right? In the neck, in the front, you have the breathing tubes that allow the breathing going from the mouth, from the head and the nose, into the lungs. You have the neck connecting the thoughts to the emotion. And says the Malbim something very interesting. He says, the purpose of the neck is to remind an individual that the emotions of a person are very volatile. And they need to have a control of the head. But in order to do that, you need to have the neck. You need to have a conduit that can channel the thoughts, translate them into what we call an emotion. In order for a man to control his emotion. And he says, Shlomo HaMelech gives us parameters about that buffer. Kemigdal David tzavarech, it has to be strong like the Tower of David. Banui letalpiot, ready to absorb war. Because we know that daily we are in an internal battle between the intellect and between the emotion. So the buffer that can control the emotions is the neck. How is that? So he says, well, from a few reasons. Reason number one, when you speak, you breathe, right? So we see that the connection between the emotion and between the brain is the speech and the breathing that it has between the two. So if you understand that you need to speak from the head and not from the heart, you create that separation, you create that buffer, right? However, in order to speak, you need to also breathe, meaning you need to take into consideration the emotion, but it should not come solely from the emotion. And this behavior needs to be regimented like the Tower of David that was there to protect from what? From all the attacks that were coming from outside, which are the emotional reactions to our surrounding. We are surrounded by a lot of events that triggers emotions and that would make us speak or react through the speech. But we explained that by controlling your speech in the last few psukim, right, you create an aura, you create an energy, you bring down a beracha by aligning yourself with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But that is done only if the speech is controlled by the intellect and not the emotion. However, says the Malbim, it is important to keep in mind that you cannot be a robot and only analytical and factual. You need to have also the aspect of the regesh, of the emotion, to know how to convey something. It's not only about what you say, it's also about how you say it. And that is the goal and the purpose of the throat, right? To create this balance between the two in order to convey a tempered, balanced, tailor-made message to the person you're actually talking to. Now, the Malbim introduces right away in that pasuk the connection to the following pasuk, which I think we need to also get into, and then we'll go back to the Gaon. In pasuk He, well, before the pasuk He, when we say Banu letalpiyot is built for war, Elef hamagen talui alav kol shiltei hagivurim, that all the warriors and all the protection of the town, right, are sitting on these towers. Right? It means that the place that allows you to protect yourself from an instinctive reaction that can hurt you from an outside influence comes from the neck. Meaning, and he introduces quickly, but says that when a person breathes and learns how to breathe and control his breathing and is in touch with his breathing, right? He has the ability to refrain himself also from just saying things spontaneously. So, says the Malbim, we find that there is, in the neck, you have much more than just a connecting point, right? You have the flow of breathing that allows you to temper yourself. Good? Okay. And he introduces right away, since we talk about the breathing and it's part of the neck, what do you breathe with? You breathe with the lungs. As we said, the Malbim differentiate the intellect, which is the head, and the body, which is the emotions and the instinctive aspect of the essence of a man. And he says, what's interesting here is that we're going from the brain to the neck to the lungs. He says we have two lungs. The two lungs represent the two heavy emotional influence there is on a person. One is the ta'avot, the desires, which is the strongest. And the left one represents the anger. That's where the heart is, right? So the right one represents the desires, the ta'avot, and the left one represents the anger. Yes.
Anger is such a midah, a bad midah that has 50% of the issues.
Yes, and they all come, and he says, and if we're going to look, what does the pasuk say? What does the pasuk say? Pasuk he, Shene shadaich, your two breasts. Now we're talking to the lady, right? To the beloved one. Your two breasts, kishne ofarim teome tzevia. They are like two baby rams, right? That are similar one to the other. Haroim bashoshanim, that go and hang out, right? They're browsing amongst the lilies, right? You remember Shoshanim is the lilies, the flower. So the lungs or the two breasts, right, that are sitting behind on top of the lungs, says the Malbim, are representing the two kochot that influence a person and that work together. How is that? And he proves it. And they all come from the same Teomei Tzevia. Teomei Tzevia, they are both Teomim, they are both twins from the same mother. Meaning that they both come from one Kaneh, from the Veshet, right? From the breathing tube. And they split in trachea, and they split in two, right? So there is a connecting points between the two, and he says, what is it? He says, when a person desires something, a baby, take a baby. When he wants something from somebody else, and he doesn't get it, he gets upset. That's an instinctive, pure reaction, right? The only difference between a child and an adult is that we tend to control or hide our temper, our tantrums, right? But in reality, if you desire something and you don't get it, the reaction will be anger. He says this is the base of every individual before we have the influence of the intellect. However, says the Malbim, the greatness of Shlomo HaMelech, the greatness of the Neshama, the greatness of this ability to stay at such a high level of spirituality and prophecy is because there was Shlomo HaMelech had the ability to control those two kochot, right? To control the desire and also to control the anger. Because they are both interconnected and can both be influenced by what? By the breathing, right? When you breathe, you control your anger. And when you breathe, you also control your desire. If you think about it, the breathing process disconnects you from the fire of those two instincts. And they all are built in a way that through your speech, you can calm yourself down, and through your speech, you can ramp up very fast. A person speaks, and he's going to talk about something that bothers him, and he's going to get angry right away. He's going to talk about the desire, and he's going to feel the desire, or the opposite. What will determine what controls what is the role of the intellect, the role of the brain that controls the speech. If your brain controls the speech, then it will control those two source of instinct, the anger on the left, and the ta'ava on the right. And this is what Shlomo HaMelech is praising. He says, in order to be so connected, you need to be aware of those two very strong Yetzarim, Yetzer Hara, right? But recognize that they are both under the control of one trigger, one vector, the speech, which is in itself supposed to be under the control of the brain. So if your brain controls it, it controls everything. Good?
Good, but why do we refer to the two lungs as opposed to the two sides of the brain?
The two sides of the brain, we know about them. There is the Chokhmah and you have the Bina, right? And then they both connect in the back with what is called the Da'at.
Yes.
You understand that? But at the end of the day, it all converges to the speech, right? So, you understand?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the understanding. This is the message the Malbim learns from the Pasuk Dalet and Pasuk He. Now, what's very interesting, have you heard of someone called Hur in the Torah? Okay. So Hur was a close advisor of Moshe Rabbeinu. He was the grandfather of Betzalel ben Uri ben Hur leMatei Yehuda. When Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai to receive the Torah, after 40 days, he didn't come down, or at least the miscount didn't come down. Am Yisrael started acting up. So Hur went and tried to convince them that what they're doing is wrong. Okay, Hur will get killed. The Erev Rav will take Hur and kill him for advocating on behalf of Moshe Rabbeinu to protect Moshe Rabbeinu. And he makes a statement. It's brought in the Midrash. He says, "Keturei tzavare atem." You have a slaughtered throat. That's how he identifies the Erev Rav that made the Avodah Zarah, the Egel HaZahav, the golden cow. So the reason why you're behaving the way you behave, the reason why you're making the mistake you're mistaking, is because you have a slaughtered throat. What he meant by that is that you don't have the ability to have the brain control your emotions. It's cut. It's cut. And if you do that, if you don't have this osmosis with control of the intellect, then you end up doing your own Avodah Zarah. You end up doing your own Egel HaZahav. This is what Hur is teaching us. And B'zchut, his Mesirut Nefesh, Betzalel was chosen to build the Bet HaMikdash, to build the Mishkan, and bring back the Shekhinah, right? And the Shekhinah is what? The connection between spirituality and physicality that coexist in one location. It's the spirituality and physicality that coexist in one location. This is Betzalel. Midah keneged midah. That is the Malbim. The Gaon Mivilna dives into these two Pesukim and says the following. First one, Kemigdal David Tzavarech, he says, we need to know that the Tzavar has two aspects to it. It has the trachea to breathe, but it also has the bone, the structure of the bone in the back that allow the head to stand still in the skeleton. So he says, He obviously translates this. He translates the same way the Malbim translates the Migdal, etc. But he says that the brain represents the Talmidei Chachamim. The head represents the Torah, represents the Talmidei Chachamim. The Tzavar represents the structure of the Talmidei Chachamim in Am Yisrael. We know that the Sanhedrin was broken into Sanhedrin HaGedolah, Sanhedrin HaKtana, that was in the Bet HaMikdash, in the Hell, and then in every single city we had Sanhedrin, representatives of Sanhedrin. Says the Gaon Vilna, it's not enough to have the brain. It's important to allow the brain to channel its wisdom in different aspects of our lives. Okay? You have to have an aspect of the brain that controls more the important things, Sanhedrin HaGedolah, and then you have the ones that are Bet HaMikdash, that focuses on halakha, and then you have the one that of the Chayil, and then you have the ones of every cities, the small cities, the details. He says, in order to be able to be in control, you have to infuse the proper knowledge and the proper attention in different aspects of your life and know how to compartmentalize them in order to create this balance between the brain and between the body. And he says, the Migdal of David, it's a tower of protection, right? He says there are, usually when you build a city, you have 4 towers on each corner, right? And when there is an attack, all the soldiers, where do they go to counterattack? They go to the towers, right? And from the towers, they hit. Good? He says, this is the flow of the Chokhmah. The Chokhmah needs to be, to have a clear path to where you strike with, to where you're going to use it. You need to have this ability to know every time what you're going to do when you're under attack. This is how Shlomo HaMelech praises the Ma'ala, right? The greatness is that he was ready. He knew how to channel at all time when there was a situation, the proper chokhmah, the proper focus, the proper attention. Why and how he was able to do that? Because he had a defense mechanism. And that defense mechanism is the throat. He says the throat is also what allows you to keep your head straight, to be strong, to feel important in the right sense, right? To be able to carry with pride what you believe in and what you live for. And he says it requires, he says, when we talk about Elef HaMagen Talui Alav Kol Shitei HaGiborim, he says Elef HaMagen, those 1,000 shields, the shield by itself, to build a shield, you need a craftsman and you need a smithman, right? You need the guy that works the metal and the guy that builds the actual shield. He says this represents different art, different talents. One talent is to be able to know how to work with difficult situations. Metal is very hard to work with. You want to have a defense mechanism. You want to be able to use your chokhmah properly and protect yourself. Well, you have to be understanding and ready to work with iron, to work in difficult environment. That's one thing. And how is that? The iron, you have to burn it and you have to hit it. And comes the craftsman that can take an element that has no shape, no color, and no purpose, and with his creativity, give it a shape of what is called a shield. This is what the Chokhmah needs to be able to do. In one end, deal with challenging situations, and not everybody is able to, not even from an emotional stand, but from an intellectual stand. It's too difficult, I don't understand, it's not for me, I drop out. No. You want to be a great person, you want to stay connected, you want to keep on growing, then you need to be intellectually ready to deal with difficult situations, with maze, right? Challenges, intellectual challenges. That's one thing. And this, you again, how do you gain that strength? It's through knowledge. The more information you have, the more knowledgeable you have, the easier it is for you to deal with different situations. And then you have the craftsman, which is the talent of creativity. This is the bina. This is the chokhmah. This is the bina. The bina comes and starts being creative on how to dismantle and how to shape and how to form from nothing something. Good? Says Shlomo HaMelech, says the Gaon, with those two kochot, going back to Adam, to what you were saying, the aspects of the brains, with those two kochot, with the knowledge and the creativity, together, you have now the ability to channel in different areas of your life, your chokhmah, your intellect. And then he adds something else. The Gemara in Masechet Brachot said, what is talpiot? Tell shekol piot ponim bo. The mount where all the mouth turns toward it. He says, when you really want to protect yourself, you have 6 directions you need to be protected from. Front, back, right, left, up, down, right? If one is open, you're not protected. He says, why did Shlomo HaMelech use the word talpiot? He says something amazing. He says, if you take the first 6 letters, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Vav, and you write them in full letters, Aleph, Lamed, Bet, Lamed, Pe, Bet, Yud, Tav, Gimel, Yud, Lamed, Dalet, Lamed, Tav, Vav, Yud, Vav. The last letters is the word talpiot. How? The last letter of the word of the letter Aleph is Pe. Aleph Lamed Pe. Bet Taf. Gimel Lamed. Dalet Taf. He Yud. And Vav Vav or Vav Vav doesn't matter, which is a Vav. Together, the word Talpiot. Okay? If you want to be ready for war and you want to be protected, you cannot disregard you cannot have any loose ends. Any loose ends. Says Shlomo HaMelech, this this comes through what? The talpiot is the neck. But the neck is only fueling what the intellect has. Are you with me? Oh, yeah.
Yes, yes.
So going back to what the Malbim says, we see how the Gaon infuses in the structure the Malbim brought to our attention, the inner aspect of the nefesh, how the knowledge and the creativity together need to be concealed and used in order to protect not only the four corners, which are the people around you and the physical situation also, but your makom, this is under your feet, and your spiritual relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is what's on top of you. Good? And continues the Gaon with the pasuk He Shene Shadayach Kishne Ofayim Teomet Seviah. He says that he's not focusing on the lungs. He's focusing on the breasts. The two breasts, what does the breast of a woman have for purpose? To feed her child, to feed her children, her babies. He says one represents Melech Israel, and the other one represents the Kohen Gadol. One is against Moshe, the other one is against Aaron HaKohen. One is Din, and the other one is Chesed, Rahamim, right? So the Din is the left. So Moshe Rabbeinu is the left breast, and the right breast is Aaron HaKohen. Okay? In parentheses, Al Pi HaKabbalah, right? The feeding from the right breast feeds Rahamim, feeds Chesed. The left breast feeds Din. You need both of them. When you build a child, you need to give them both of them. You need to be able to give them the Chesed and the Din together. This is why a lady has two breasts, so that she can give from the two essences to her baby and build the baby. From a biological thing, just so you know, from my old days, in the milk of the mother, there is what are called antibodies M. These are the antibodies that protect the baby from sicknesses, right? So it's incredible how, in one hand, it gives you nutrients, the chesed, but it also gives you protection, the din. Amazing. It's really amazing. It's not only a food, it's a food and an antibody. Continues the Gaon. He says the Melech is Olam Hazeh. Kohen Gadol represents the Bet HaMikdash, Am Yisrael in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Olam Haba. Right? He says they have to be Keshne Ofarim. They are both one, right? They are both twins coming from the same essence. You cannot disconnect Chesed and Din. They coexist all the time. If you only have Chesed without Din, or only Din without Chesed, you cannot give life. You cannot teach. You cannot give power. It's impossible. So in every Chesed of yours, there is an element of Din that needs to be taken into consideration. And in every action of Din, there is an element of Chesed that must be taken into consideration. Obviously, you will have a dominant and a recessive at all time, but there has to be a coexistence of both. Teomet Seviyah, they are both equal. Moshe wa Aaron, Aaron Moshe. Many times in the Torah changes between the order who comes first, Moshe or Aharon to come and teach us. There's not one more important than the other. They are both brothers from the same mother, expressing two different essences, but are both equally important and vital. Hu Moshe ve'Aaron, hu Aaron ve'Moshe. That's what it says in Bereshit Rabbah. Haroim bashoshanim. What does that mean, the roim bashoshanim? So we said that they are wandering in the fields of lilies. He says these are the berachot. Says the Gaon Mivilna, if you're able to take your knowledge, transmit it through a fluid flow of communication, control it over your emotions, over the anger, over the ta'ava, like the Malbim says. And you're out there to give. The dadim, it's through that control that the Malbim addresses, you are now able to start giving, like Moshe and Aharon, you're bringing the beracha out, the dadim. That's why the lungs are hidden and the breasts are out there. Your inner work, your control, it's within yourself. It's not something that needs to be imposed on others. You can work on yourself, but it cannot be felt and imposed on the people around you. However, you need to be able to give to others depending on each what they need, the chesed or the din. When you have that in place as Shlomo HaMelech, then what comes out of you is beracha. It's all the berachot. And we see that with Moshe and Aaron. We had the man, we had the Ananekavod, the Be'er Miriam. We're in a desert. But this is the impact a person has when there is this internal structure put in place. So now we see that not only the source of wisdom comes out from the mouth, but it's also all the dadim, all the midot also are infused in the speech, in the actions of a person, right? So we find again this perfect balance, controlled and channeled properly, not only from the intellect, suppressing the emotions, but also from the proper midot and the proper emotions. But all this starts from what? It starts from the internal regimented structure, the organization of our own essence, understanding what prevails and what is secondary. Only through that compartmentalized thought process, which comes through the neck, right? In order to control the emotions, will we be able not to use the emotion to channel properly what is needed around us. And he says, the Gaon, he finishes this pasuk and he says, with a statement that Moshe Rabbeinu did when Datan va'Aviram, so was speaking Lashon Hara about Moshe Rabbeinu. He says, Lo hare'oti et echad mikem, I didn't do anything wrong to you. Ela bidvarim rakim, I spoke nicely, I never said a bad word to you, I never hurt you. Comes the Gami Vila and indirectly throws an amazing knowledge. Is that the more you control yourself and the more naturally you know how to speak words of wisdom and the proper formula to each individual, you will not hurt anyone. And it's not because you are refraining yourself from saying certain things, but because you are so in control that naturally you pick up on the person's weaknesses and vulnerabilities and fragilities and convey the message the best way possible.
When I refrain, the other person sees you are refraining. So it's almost, you didn't say it, but the other person says, you want to shout me and you. So,
yes.
So the
exactly.
other gets more.
Exactly. It's a very good point. When we refrain ourselves, we didn't say anything, but we said a lot.
Yes.
Now,
It's not finish the job.
and it's also going back to this internal battle, right? We're still that it's an inner war zone that we're in. So here Shlomo HaMelech comes and obviously at his own level reveals to us the inner work that he kept on doing, that he implemented in order to stay at the level that he was in.
And why does breathing appease the tavot and the anger? When you breathe, they go down.
They go down.
Yes. Why?
Yes. Listen, physically speaking, maybe you oxygenate your body more, you calm the blood flow more. Al pi asod, the breathing vayipar be'apav nishmat chaim vayihi adam lenefesh chaya vayipar be'apav nishmat chaim ruach memalela. Right? Hashem gave us the neshama through the breathing. Right? So when you breathe, you infuse yourself with, if you want, more awareness of your neshama. Right?
You get more spiritual.
That's right. So the lungs that are supposed to be inhaled with ruach, right? With spirituality and take control over the blood, right? If you don't control your breathing, the blood takes over that. Right? So it's they are under pressure of the blood, which is the ta'avot, which is the Yitzhak Adam wa Nefesh, or they are in control from the breathing, which is coming from the neshama, and it kind of expands, right? It pushes the blood out away.
Nice. Incredible. And this is 40,000 meters, no?
Yeah, no, that's probably 38,000 feet. But Baruch Hashem, we see how incredible. We spoke about the hair, we spoke about the teeth, we spoke about the lips, we spoke about the trachea, the lungs. And it makes such a perfect sense.
It's no coincidence, all of it.
No, not at all. No.
Perfect.
Baruch Hashem.
Wow.
Very good.
Spectacular.
Baruch Hashem. So we just finished Pasuk Hey.
Beautiful.
Bezrat Hashem. All right.
Thank you very much. Bye, Adam. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.